We are so grateful to them. I'm grateful to the band that played, and I'm grateful to all of you for taking the time to be here, because I know that it's a school night on a Monday night, and I know that everybody's busy and probably traveled some distance, many of you, to get here. You know, I have been running for the presidency for about 6 months now, and what's been remarkable over the last 6 months is the crowds that we've been attracting all across the country. I mean, we had 20,000 people show up in Austin. We had 20,000 people show up in Atlanta, Georgia. 15,000 in Oakland, California. We had 5,000 people show up in Seattle for a fundraiser. And these crowds have been a terrific cross-section of the country. You know, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, Native American, old, young, Emmett Smith. and sometimes when I'm looking, what is going on there? She's got the beeper going on. She can't turn off the beeper. There you go. That's right, everybody yell, turn off yourself. But sometimes when I look out over these crowds, I have to ask myself, how did all these people get here? Who are all these folks? And it's tempting to say to myself, oh, see, I'm breaking my flow here. Reverend, tell them to turn off their cell phone.
In the name of Jesus.
I'm so blessed, by the way, to have Reverend Freddie Haynes as part of our campaign process. He's just one of the greatest spiritual leaders in the country. He's a dear friend to my pastor, Dr. Jeremiah A. Wright Jr. at Trinity United Church of Christ. And give him a round of applause. But sometimes I look out over these crowds and I ask myself, I'm sure that sometimes when you look at this church that's just been, going on, and you ask, well, how did all these people get here? And it's tempting to think that it's all about you. I'm just so fabulous. And everybody's coming out. But my wife tells me that's not the case. The reason people are coming out is because America is desperate for a change. They want something new. They want to turn the page and write a new chapter in this nation's history. Now, some of that is just the fact that they're fed up with George Bush. And, I'm not going to blame all of you for having gotten George Bush started in politics. You had no way of knowing. But look, over the last 6 years, I think we've all seen that our politics in Washington has been broken, and as a consequence, we have not met the challenges that face us as a nation. And everybody here knows what those challenges are because you experience them every day. If not you, then you meet somebody who's dealing with these challenges. Everywhere I go, I meet mothers who describe to me how they can't find health insurance for the children, or else they have to go without health insurance themselves, or they've been bankrupt because somebody in their family got sick. Everywhere I go, I meet parents who are trying to figure out how to get their child into a school that actually teaches, because despite the slogans, we're leaving millions of children behind, unable to compete in the international economy. All across the nation, I run into people who ask, why is it that we're spending $3 and change at the gasoline pump, and all that money is going to some of the most hostile nations on earth? We're ending up funding both sides of the war on terrorism. And in the bargain, we're changing the climate of the planet so that we may not pass on a world that is as beautiful as the one that we inherited from our parents. We may not be passing that on to our children if we're not careful. All across the country, people say, you know, I understand that if you're a corporate CEO and you've got a lot of stock options, that the economy's never been so good. But, you know, I haven't seen a raise, or I haven't seen an increase in my wages in years. And I'm trying to figure out how to fill up my car at the gas station, how to save for my child's college education, how to save for my own retirement. And all across the country, I'm meeting mothers and fathers who say, when are you going to bring my son or daughter home? You know, has my son or daughter died in vain? What can I tell them when we've spent billions of dollars and thousands of lives, and the result has been that we are less safe and our standing is diminished in the world? So people, I understand why folks are frustrated, and that's part of the reason that we're attracting big crowds, because they're just tired of what's been taking place in Washington. And that's before you get to Katrina. And the fact that it's taken dead bodies floating down the middle of the streets of a major American city for us to be cognizant of race and poverty in this society. And that's before you get to Scooter. You know, I was talking to a friend of mine, and he pointed out, you know, even Paris Hilton got some jail time. Right? She didn't get a part. And so there's a sense that somehow we've got two sets of laws. Laws for the well-connected and laws for everybody else. You know, nobody's giving a pardon to that young man who got sentenced for 10 years in jail because he had consensual sex with his girlfriend who was 2 years younger than him. Nobody's giving a pardon to the nonviolent drug offenders who we're rounding up each and every day. So there's a sense of justice missing. People are reacting to all of that. But here's the thing. People have been angry for a long time, but it's not just their anger that has motivated them coming in. It's also hope. Now, people don't just want to be against something. They want to be for something. They want to feel as if it is possible for us as Americans to join together across divisions of race, or divisions of class, or divisions of religion, or divisions of region. And that we still have it in ourselves to come together and take responsibility for each other. That we still can join together around a common purpose or a higher purpose. You know, we've lost that sense that we're bound together as Americans. But I think deep down people still want to have that feeling. They want to know that, you know, if there are poor children in Dallas, Texas, that impoverishes all of us. If there are veterans in Dallas that are homeless, that diminishes all of our patriotism. That idea that I am my brother's keeper, I am my sister's keeper, that's not lost. It just has been dormant because we haven't had leadership that encourages that sense of fellow feeling, that encourages that sense that we're in this thing together, that you're not on your own, that somebody's going to be there if you fall to lift you up. And now, sometimes when I talk like this, the folks in Washington, they get concerned. They say, oh, he's talking about hope again. He's so naive. They say, oh, you know, he's a hope monitor. He's a hope peddler. I stand guilty as charged. I am hopeful. I'm hopeful for two reasons. I'm hopeful, number one, because when I look out at your faces, when I look out at the faces of these crowds that I see, I'm reminded of something. You know, the American people at their core are a decent people. Now, they want to do the right thing. I mean, folks are busy. They're not paying attention to what's going on in Washington. They're trying to get their kids to school. They're trying to make sure that they get to work on time. But when you really sit down and talk to them, it turns out they've got good values. And people share values across some of the divisions that have been set up. Everybody believes if you're able to work, you should be able to find a job that pays a living wage. Everybody believes you shouldn't be bankrupt when you get sick. that your child should be able to find a good education. They should be able to go to college, even if they're not rich. Everybody believes that we should have clean air and clean water and be good stewards to the planet. Everybody believes we should be respected and not just feared in the world. People have a set of common values. That makes me hopeful. You know what also makes me hopeful is we've been through tougher times before. You know, you think about what America's gone through: Revolutionary War, the Civil War, 2 world wars, the Cold War, the Great Depression, Jim Crow, slavery. We've been through tougher times than these, and we have come out more unified and more prosperous than we were in the past. When we tap in to the strength and optimism of the American people, there's no reason why we can't do that again today. I don't believe that somehow our generation is not as capable as previous generations of struggling on behalf of a more just and equal society. I think we have it in us as well. What we need is some leadership to help pull that out, to lift it up. So don't let people tell you we can't solve the problems that we face today. We can solve every single one of our problems. You take health care. You know, if we put money into prevention so that children are getting regular checkups instead of having to go to the hospital for treatable illnesses like asthma, we save money in the long term.
Right.
If we invest in technology that improves quality and cuts bureaucracy, we save money. We can save $150 billion a year and take that money every single year, and we can take that money and we can make sure that every single American has basic health care in this country. And we can do it by the end of the next president's first term, by the end of my first term as president. We know what to do on education. Listen, when people talk about the achievement gap, and they talk about it as if it's just a black or brown problem, understand our workforce will be 50% black and brown in just a few years. You know, if you want somebody to be supporting you in your old age with Social Security, we've got to make sure those folks are working and that they're succeeding and that they've got the skills that they need, and we know what to do in order to make them succeed. If we invest in early childhood education so that children are starting school already knowing their numbers and their letters, and somebody's read to them and somebody's given them some love, they can succeed. We know we're going to have to recruit an entire new generation of teachers, but we've got to pay our teachers more.
That's right. Yeah.
And we've got to give them the support and the training that they need. If we do that, they will succeed. And they are willing to be held accountable. They just don't want to be held accountable by standardized tests that require them to stop teaching.
Right. That's right. Exactly.
We know what to do on energy. You know, if we increase fuel efficiency standards on cars to 45 miles a gallon. Now, I saw a Maserati out there. You know, folks like their cars. I understand. But think about this. If we increase our fuel efficiency standards on cars to 45 miles per gallon, we would eliminate all the oil that we import from the Persian Gulf. Now imagine what that would do for our economy and our environment. Imagine what that would do for our foreign policy if suddenly we are not dependent on Middle Eastern oil. I mean, I'm not somebody who believes that the Iraq War was fought just because of oil. But there's no doubt, I don't think anybody can deny, that if there hadn't been oil in Iraq, there would have been a different calculation as to where we're going in, because things are, you know, there's some rough stuff going on in Africa, and people haven't shown up with 150,000 troops. You know, when things were going bad in Bosnia, I mean, we did it. We did airlifts and we did aerial bombing, but we didn't send in ground troops. So it would transform our foreign policy. You know, even on our foreign policy, as discouraging as things are, and they are discouraging. Look, there are no good options in Iraq right now. There are bad options and worse options. Which is why, back in 2002, I said, this is a bad idea, we should not go in. I noticed it's easy now to be against the war. It was a lot harder when Bush was polling at 60%. But that's good. You know, I want people to learn. And now when you look at it, there are no good options, but we can still act responsibly. And we can be as careful getting out as we were careless getting in, but get our combat troops out by next year.
Right.
And when we do that, we've got to ramp up our diplomacy and make sure that we recognize there are no military solutions to what's going on in Iraq right now. There has to be a political solution, which will involve getting the parties together in Iraq, but also getting the parties involved in the region. Now, you notice I had a little debate that went on for a week. And because I said that we've got to engage and talk to anybody, including dictators. Once again, Washington said, "Oh, he's naive." Clearly, this shows a lack of experience. But I really love this debate because it focused and signified what this election is about. See, what they were really saying, and by the way, some of these pundits were the same folks who were saying what a cakewalk it was going to be in Iraq. What they were really saying is Barack didn't repeat the conventional wisdom of Washington.
Right.
Because the conventional wisdom is that, well, you can't talk to people. You can't talk to Castro, you can't talk to Chavez, you can't talk to Ahmadinejad. Well, why? I know who I am. I know what I stand for.
Exactly.
I'm not going to lose a propaganda war with a dictator. When I tell them, you've got to stop locking up people for no reason. You need to stop developing nuclear arms that will create an arms race in the Middle East. You've got to stop calling for the destruction of Israel. I have no problem. They may not like what I want to hear, but I don't mind telling them to their face what I believe. And when we do that, then what happens is that the entire world will watch, and that will actually strengthen our position. Because they'll say, you know what? America is not operating out of arrogance, but they're operating out of their values and their ideas. They're standing up for what they believe in, and they're willing to voice it to anybody. And they're willing to listen and have a debate and have an argument. I am confident in our capacity to win any argument. You can't tell me that Hugo Chavez can win an argument against America when we stand for what we believe in. And so when people say, we don't know about Obama, yeah, he talks good. He can get people excited, but we're not sure about his experience. What they really mean is that I'm not willing to do the same thing over and over and over again, even when it doesn't work. That's not experience. The question is, do you draw the right lessons from your experience? That's what is at stake in this election, because in Washington, people do the same stuff over and over again. They take money from, drug company PACs and insurance PACs, and then they're puzzled, well, why is it we still don't have health care? Well, of course we don't have. Y'all doing the same thing over and over again. They wonder, well, they don't make investments in our inner cities and our education, and they wonder why is it we're keeping on sending all these young people to jail. Well, because you're doing the same thing over and over again. That's not experience. That's bad judgment. You're not learning from your experience.
Right.
And on foreign policy, when we do that, when we start learning from our experience and doing things differently, based on our values and our ideals as Americans, then the opportunities to repair the breach that exists around the world is there. Now, I want to stand before the United Nations and I want to say, America's back. We're ready to lead. We're ready to lead because we're going to work with you to defeat terrorism and change hearts and minds in the Muslim world. We're going to work with you to make sure that we're locking down nuclear weapons that are still floating around the world because we haven't invested in locking them down. We want to work with you to end the genocide in Darfur. We want to work with you to reduce the incidence of AIDS in sub-Saharan Africa. We want to work with you to build schools in the Middle East that teach math and science instead of hate. And we're going to do that for not just out of charity, we're going to do that because it's good for our security. And while we're at it, we're going to close Guantanamo. And we're going to restore habeas corpus because that affirms who we are as Americans. And that will make us safer because we will be less subject to propaganda when people recognize that we are not hypocrites, but we actually believe in what we stand for. Now, that's the opportunity that we have. And I'm confident in my ability to lead this country in a better direction, but I can't do it by myself. I've got to do it with you. You know, change does not happen from the top down in America. It happens from the bottom up. I was in Selma, Alabama back in March, celebrating the 42nd anniversary of the march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Some of you know it as Bloody Sunday. And you know the story. A group of ordinary folks gathered together in Brown Chapel, and they set out for the state capitol because they were rallying for voting rights. And when they got to the Edmund Pettus Bridge, they were confronted by horses and tear gas and billy clubs, and they were beaten and gassed and trampled. And they staggered back, heads blooded, eyes burning. I'm sure that on that day, some of them lost hope. Some of them thought, well, maybe we can't change separate and unequal. Maybe the powers and principalities are arrayed against us. They're too great. But this amazing thing happened, Reverend. On that day, millions of people were watching the television. And they turned to their parents, their mothers and their fathers, and they said, you know, that's not the America that you taught us. And they turned to their brothers and their sisters and they said, you know, there's something unjust about this. We've got to do something about it. We've got to act. And they loaded up on buses and automobiles and trains, and they descended on Selma, thousands of people, and joined the marches. Became a mighty stream of marches and swept aside the horses and the tear gas and the billy clubs, rendered them irrelevant. They made it to the state capitol. And that same year, Lyndon Baines Johnson, nobody would have anticipated that he would be the messenger of justice, signed the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And you know, it was a powerful thing for me standing on that bridge next to people who had marched 42 years ago and understanding they had marched for me. Their names weren't in the history books, but they were heroes. They had marched for me. They didn't know me. I was 4 years old at the time, but they imagined me. They understood that, you know what, there might be a 4-year-old boy out there someday who might want to run for the United States Senate. A 4-year-old girl out there who might want to become a doctor or a lawyer. There's a 4-year-old out there somewhere who might want to become a preacher and have a big church and do great things for the community. They imagined us. Not just blacks, they imagined whites who thought, you know, there are people, all 4-year-olds out there who are going to want to live in a country that's more just and more equal. It was a powerful thing. And you know, when I got back to Washington, some people who had heard me speak, they said, well, Brock, that was a nice speech. That was a great celebration of African American history. I said, you don't understand. That wasn't a celebration of African American history. That was a celebration of America. Because that's how change happens in America. That's how we brought an end to Jim Crow, but it's also how unions got the right to organize. That's how women got the right to vote. That's how the environmental movement started. That's how wave after wave of immigrants got more and more rights so that they could build a life for themselves in this nation. That's how we brought an end to the Vietnam War. That's how we'll bring an end to the Iraq War. It's because at some level people say, enough. We imagine the world not as it is, but as it might be. That's the moment we're in right now. You know, it doesn't happen that often where you get this chance to put your shoulder against the wheel and move history a little bit. We're in one of those moments right now. But we've got to seize it. And I promise you that if all of you are willing to join us and we seize it, then not only are we going to win an election, but more importantly, we're going to change the country. So, thank you, everybody. Thank you.
I want to thank everybody for coming. We still got food outside. We're going to try to get some music going.
Well, we'll take a couple of questions.
Okay.
Just two.
Okay.
Maybe 3. All right. This gentleman, then that young lady, and then these two right here, and I'll talk to the superstar over here. All right? Okay. Go ahead. I'm trying to make it quick.
Your lack of political experience, is that going to hinder or help you, to get on the ground running?
Well, I think, as I said, the question is not experience, the question is judgment and leadership.
Amen.
And, everybody here knows 60-year-olds who've got no sense.
Yeah.
They've got a lot of experience.
Exactly.
But they don't know how to translate their experience into judgment. Nobody had a better resume than Dick Cheney. Or Donald Rumsfeld. I mean, they had seen it all. But they couldn't translate it into an understanding that the world has changed. Now, in terms of hitting the ground running, part of it is putting together a good team, setting a vision for the country, and then putting a good team together. And we've gotten some terrific people. I mean, we've got the former member of Joint Chiefs of Staff for the Air Force is on our Foreign Policy Committee. We got the former National Security Advisor under Clinton as part of our team. You know, we've got terrific seasoned hands. But more than experience, what I'm interested in is competence. Right? No more guys who are heads of the Arabian Horses Association. We're not going to do that. I'm interested in integrity. Integrity. People who are in public service for public service. So I announced a couple months ago, I said, if you want to work in the Obama administration, you will not be able to lobby afterwards. You can't lobby me after you've helped write laws that affect people. You can't do it.
Yes.
Third thing is independence. Now this is important. I voted against Alberto Gonzales. Everybody said, well, why you do that? I said, well, you know, in talking to him, it was clear that he thought his job was to represent the president. He's the president's lawyer, but that's not the job of Attorney General. Attorney General is supposed to be the people's lawyer, telling the president what you can't do. Explaining to the president, I'm sorry, Mr. President, the constitutional is not optional. You can't just you've got to follow it. So that is what's going to help me hit the ground running. But the main thing is, if we built a movement, look, the reason we don't have health care in this country is not because of a lack of good plans. Anybody want to see my plan? It is, 20 pages long. It's on my website. You can read it, all the details. We've gathered all the wisdom of the top health care economists and specialists. But what blocks it is the fact that we don't have a movement that can overcome the special interest in the lobbyists and
Right.
So what will help me hit the ground running is having built a movement for change. So that when I get there, we know what we're after. We know what we're trying to do. All right? This young lady right here.
Senator Obama, you're probably aware. Medicare.
Who's having fun back there? Y'all having too much fun back there. I know the baby's there. She's so cute. Is that you, Evan? That's because you're a Hall of Famer. We almost done. Go ahead.
Every year, we almost face. I'm a physician here in the city, Dr. Hardell, my colleague, and I have a couple others here. And we are all struggling to pay our bills, to get reimbursed properly. Currently, if everything stays in the current system, over the next 10 years, we'll experience another 15% decrease in our reimbursement, which commercialized insurance companies follow their lead. We are struggling. I was wondering if you could help me with that.
I can help you, but you're going to have to work with me to help you. We can't just put more money into the existing system, because we spend $2 trillion a year on health care every year. We spend twice as much per capita as Germany or France.
How much
They got better outcomes.
is on it? How much?
They're healthier than we are. And we spend twice as much per person. Now, part of that is that 40% of our health care dollar is going into insurance profits, drug company profits, and so forth. So we've got to transform the system. And what that means for you specifically as a doctor is I think we've got to raise reimbursement rates. But we may have to change what is reimbursed. And what I mean by that is that right now the incentives are set up in the medical system where you're reimbursed for taking a gallbladder out, but nobody measures, well, is that the best treatment? Was that the right thing to do? There's no coordination between teams.
You're talking about pay for performance.
Well, I'm talking about pay for performance as one aspect of an overall irrational system, because we don't have a healthcare system, we have a disease care system that doesn't invest in prevention, doesn't invest in... So what I want to do, and I think doctors will benefit from this, is let's have a transparent and honest reimbursement system where you are actually getting paid your costs. But let's also think about making sure that we are having a team of healthcare specialists who are working in a coordinated fashion with patients, so that, for example, if you're dealing with a diabetic, it's more important that they are taking their treatments regularly and they're going to a podiatrist rather than focus on the $30,000 foot amputation that we're going to reimburse. If we don't do those things, we'll never have enough money to give you the proper reimbursement. Because if you've got 10% healthcare inflation, I don't care how much money we've got. The Medicare and the Medicaid system are breaking down. They're bankrupt right now. It is unsustainable. So we're going to have to, fundamentally change. Now, the last thing that we can do for doctors, by the way, if we put technology in place, we can reduce errors and reduce litigation rates. That would be important. But the second thing is we've got to re-examine how we educate doctors. Because you can't expect young doctors who are coming out with $100,000, $120,000, $130,000, $140,000 worth of debt, and then you want them to be a general practitioner or a family doctor, and now their insurance rates are $250,000, $300,000. It just doesn't compute. So we're going to have to figure out how we can finance your education so that you don't come out with all this debt, and that allows you then to go into a variety of healthcare practices that might actually result in better outcomes. Okay, who was the third person? Here you go.
What makes healthcare a right and not something that you should... I come from a very low-income family in South Texas. We never had insurance growing up, but I saw that, I knew that, and I myself got above that. And I pay for my own insurance now, and I've worked hard to do that. I know it's not a right. It's not my right to have insurance. It's something I earn. And I don't know what makes it a right or what makes it something you should pay for, just like your driver's license or anything else that you should take care of in your personal responsibility. I don't expect the government to pay my way.
Well, I guess I would, when you talk about rights versus, privileges, rights are what we decide are rights. I mean, there's nothing, innate about the right to health care. I mean, people in France think you have a right, if you're sick, to get treatment. But I guess here's the broader point, and that is that healthcare is one of those things where you can't make consumer choices the same way you make some other consumer choices. You can't decide if your child gets sick. You know what? The price isn't that good right now.
But I'm
going to hold off. Just let me finish. I'm going to hold off for a couple months until the price goes down before I get my child's insurance. Right? There are a lot of people who work real hard, who've got 3 jobs, and still don't have health insurance and still can't afford it. So it's not a function of whether you're working hard or not. It is a function of where you stand on the economic ladder. But I guess there's some things that we decide, we think that we should take that out of the realm of the marketplace. We make a decision. I think that a civilized society makes a decision. It's a good investment for all of us to make sure that every child is educated.
Right.
It's a good decision for all of us to make sure that we all have a national defense. One could say you don't have a right to not get blown up. You don't have a right to have the fire department come to your house and put out your fire. You could start your own fire department, but you don't, because you make a decision that, part of being part of a community is that there's some things that we're going to take out of the marketplace and make sure that everybody's has some floor beneath them. Now you do make a legitimate point, which is that everybody's got to have some regard for their own health. So don't, and let's just be honest right now, our obesity rates have skyrocketed. If we went back to the obesity rates that existed back in 1980, we would reduce future Medicare payments by $1 trillion. Wow. Because about 1/3 of healthcare inflation is the direct result of increases in obesity. Now, we should have some responsibility. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, you know what, if you smoke, if you are not exercising and so forth, you know, you're going to probably pay a little bit extra. Because we should incentivize better behavior. But, on the other hand, you know, if your child is born with cystic fibrosis, that child's not responsible for that.
That's right.
And we want to make sure that that child has coverage, and that, I think, is the objective. There are ways we can create some market incentives for better behavior, but I think we should make a decision we're rich enough as a society that we can make sure that everybody's got baseline coverage. Now, if you want to go get that liposuction, you got to pay for that on your own. Okay, last question. This young lady right there.
I'm a principal at a pre-K through 5th grade setting in Boulder City, Louisiana. We are having difficulties with retaining qualified teachers because of the No Child Left Behind. When you become president, can we depend on you for your support and giving us some relief from this ungodly mandate?
Well, here's what I'm going to do. I would not reauthorize No Child Left Behind as it's currently designed. So it needs to be changed. Because, first of all, the president left behind the money. Don't do something that you don't fund.
Exactly.
The second thing is that the biggest flaw in No Child Left Behind is it doesn't use the proper assessment tools of whether a teacher is doing a good job.
Exactly. This is what we're talking about.
You can't just have a series of standardized tests. You know, there's nothing wrong with having one standardized test to help give a benchmark of whether progress is being made. But if a child is starting behind already, then they're not going to hit the national norm at the same pace as my children, who have all the advantages in the world and just start off with a couple of parents who are focused single-mindedly and can give them all the resources they need to learn. So I want high standards, and I want teachers to be held accountable, but I want an assessment tool that actually measures whether they're doing a good job or not. And if we do that, then I think that we can actually make some progress. Listen, I just got handed a note. It says, bad weather is closing in on the airport. We need to go. So I just want to say to all of you, I am grateful for your participation. I hope this is hello and not goodbye. I hope that I see you again. We're going to be back in Dallas. I want everybody here to get on, you know, if you like what you heard, then I need you to get on your email list, send out the message that, you know, Obama's coming. And he's ready to go. And that you're supporting me. Because we want to create that kind of viral atmosphere where we're just constantly, continually getting more and more information out here. All right? I'm grateful to y'all. Thank you so much.